Darlington Raceway, or the track Too Tough to Tame as it's known to many, is where the purest of NASCAR competition meets true Southern hospitality. A NASCAR staple since 1950, Darlington Raceway has seen some of motorsport's most talented drivers thunder to victory lane. In 2009, a NASCAR tradition, the Southern 500, will return as Darlington Raceway celebrates 60 seasons of racing. Darlington Raceway President Chris Browning unveiled a new logo for the annual Southern 500 event with the assistance of two-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion and 1965 Southern 500 winner Ned Jarrett and former car owner and Camden, South Carolina native Bondy Long. Jarrett and Long won the 65 Southern 500 in record fashion, beating the field by an astonishing 14 laps, a record that by today's standards is unbreakable.
Well, certainly it was one of the goals that I'd set for myself when I started in what was then Grand National Series of NASCAR, and to do it in that fashion by such a large margin of victory. And I'd like to sit here and say that I just flat out ran everybody by that much, but that was not the case on that day. And I hope that it is a record that'll never be broken, because you can imagine what a dull race it would be today. And it was probably pretty dull that day.
Jarrett talks about why his win at Darlington was such a milestone in his NASCAR career.
Well, I mentioned earlier that it was one of my goals in Grand National racing was to win the Southern 500. And the reason that I put that it was one of my priorities and put it in my goals was the fact that it was the most prestigious race on the circuit because it was the oldest race. And it was also being run on the toughest track on the circuit. And I feel today that Darlington is still the toughest track that they race on. And it gives you such a special feeling when you can win. You don't necessarily beat the track on that day, but you just outluck everybody, and when you do win, and it just gives you such a great feeling of accomplishment to be able to do that.
Former car owner Long talked about how physically demanding the Southern 500 was on drivers in the 1960s.
I think too that a lot of the drivers today don't realize how hard it was for Ned to drive those cars that we had back then, because they were big, they were heavy, and I've seen Ned come in and he could barely hold a can of Coke in his hand because it just wears you out.
Following their historic Southern 500 victory in 1965, Jarrett and Long returned to their homes in Camden, South Carolina, to find that the entire town was waiting to celebrate with them.
Yeah, we had no idea what to expect, but it was a very pleasant surprise when we pulled up. My address was 2013 Brook Lane, I believe, and Brook Drive, 2013. I tried to get it changed to 2011. My car number was 11, but the next door neighbor had that, and the post office wasn't going to change that, so it was 2013, but it worked out okay. But anyway, when we got home that evening, they had a banner almost as wide as this room, about 4 or 5 feet deep. I don't know how they made that up so quick back then, but yeah, they were there having a picnic and were just having a big time, and that really meant a lot to us since Martha and I were not natives of Camden, and so it's good to do that. And then Bondy had a party for all of us at the Camden Country Club later that week.
That was
a really neat deal, because up to that point I had not been to many country clubs, and that was very special. Bondy had pull there into town.
Well, now the best parties were the ones we had in Boykin. Those were the good. But I remember going home after that race, and our race car shop, if you're not familiar with Camden, was actually in Boykin, South Carolina. It's about 8 miles out of Camden, so I went home with the race car and got it in the shop and everything, and I went in the house. When I went in the house, I noticed the phone was ringing, and I picked it up, and somebody, I heard you won, so-and-so, and they so. I put the phone down. I still got all that stuff on, dirty and everything, and I put the phone down, and the phone rang again, and I picked it up. And I said, damn, it's about the third or fourth time I thought, well, hell, what did we do? You know, and then it just started sinking in that we had won that race. Well, the phone never quit ringing. I mean, it went on past midnight that night. People calling us up to congratulate us, you know, and stuff. And it's you know, it was a great thing. It was great for us. We had a great time doing it.
Both Jarrett and Long recognized the significance of the return of the Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway.
I was very pleased when I heard that they were bringing the Southern 500 back here to Darlington. That's where it belongs, and it's good to see it back here. And I think that it'll have a positive effect as far as fans are concerned. You know, it'll still be a 500-mile race, just like it has been in the past, but having that name attached to it, I think, gives it more credibility. And not that it needed credibility, but I think that it'll add credibility to it, and it certainly is pleasing to me.
I really like the idea. I mean, I live 30 miles from here. We've always considered this our home track, and you know, the Southern 500 coming back, it means a lot. And believe it or not, I've talked to people at home, and they really like the idea of it being renamed the Southern 500, because some of them still remember when I see people all the time that remember. And I'm thinking, how do you guys remember that far back? You know, I've forgotten so much stuff, but they remember. You know, the Southern 500.
With the return of the Southern 500 comes even more prestige to a win at Darlington Raceway in 2009.
I believe that most of them have that as part of their goals, is to win here at Darlington, because they know it is the toughest track that they race on, and it can give you such a great feeling of accomplishment to win here. And yeah, the drivers that I've talked to specifically about this track, they want to win, and those who have won here, they cherish those wins. And I truly believe, and this is not hype, I wasn't told to say this or anything, but I truly believe that now with the Southern 500 name attached to this race now, I believe they'll want to win it even more.
Don't miss your chance to witness history when the biggest stars of the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series vie for a win in the 2009 Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway. Tickets for this historic event are still available and start as low as $35. To purchase tickets for the 2009 Southern 500 weekend on May 8th through 9th, call 843-395-8802 or log on to darlingtonraceway.com.